I started out just as an engineer, and many of you are in business school. I guess all of you are. What's unique about engineers and physicians is they always have the right answer. I was a good engineer, and all the answers were at the end of an equation. So I always had the perfect answer. So when I started consulting, I would tell people what the perfect answer was. And I could never figure out why they didn't listen to me and just do it. And as an engineer, I couldn't figure it out. And it took me a while to find out or figure out that just because the answer is right doesn't mean it's what's appropriate for the change. And that's a really big thing to understand. You could do the best analysis in the world, and whatever you come up with may not matter because of the context of the people you're working with. They're not capable, the culture's not right. Um, they hear you telling them what's right, and they have to live with the answer, and you go on to another project. So there's a lot of things going on that I was not cognizant of because I was just a geek. So my first inflection point was stop telling them what the answer is and show them how to figure out an answer for themselves. The second point that you're going to get into very shortly in your class, in your projects rather, is that just because you change the process doesn't mean it's going to stick. Because processes are aligned with the management of the processes. And if the boss of the process doesn't get it or doesn't like it, it's not going to work. Because everybody inside the process ultimately needs to please their boss, ultimately, or leave. So you have to work with the managers at the same time, not just the workers. And that's a really big thing. It took me a while to figure out once again. And then the other one is just more of the social side, which is what I'm kind of getting to now. It's great to have a technical solution, but if you don't have people engaged and talking about it and collaborating on maybe alternatives that might make more sense for them, then how do you move forward? So the social part becomes a process in change, running in parallel with what you're doing in all your great analysis. The socialization runs in parallel to make the change better and make it stick better. So that's a big thing. And let's see. Oh, then I got involved a lot with the Shingo Institute. You guys may not know that, but they did a really good job maybe 15 years ago on compiling behaviors. And so what's interesting to me is that you're going to learn through Eric lots of cool tools to figure things out in the way you may not have known before. But it doesn't go anywhere without a change of behaviors. And one of the things I liked about the Trello board that Eric just shared with you, he didn't talk about roses and onions. Roses and onions were on the extreme right.
Yeah.
And you can actually talk about behaviors of an organization in terms of roses and onions. What behaviors really help them move forward to where they need to be in the market? And what are the onions, the behaviors that hold them back? So how do you tie behaviors into change? Because if you can't act differently, it doesn't work. So, and how do you formalize that? Shigo did a fantastic job, but I've started at the end of my career, I started to actually have measurable behaviors for my teams in terms of what behaviors, based on what I was observing, I thought would help them move forward. So when you get stuck on your projects, sometimes it's going to be because of the behaviors of some of the people for a variety of reasons. So, and I already talked about wanting to give back and get into education. So that's where I am now.
Yeah. Thanks, Beau. You know, it's interesting. You talk about the behavior thing, and there seems to be like maybe an ongoing, debate in when you're trying to get people to do lean. You sort of throw them into a project first, which is sort of okay. You're submerging them in this behavioral environment, or do you teach them how to do a project first, right? And my thing is when I'm working with a team is I always try to be just a little bit late, so I always immerse them first so that they know, okay, I need to sort of figure out which project I should do or which project's important. And then we'll teach you some tools how you might tease that out, right? But which is maybe the behavior piece. That,
Yes. So that works great in courses. For me, when I'm hired, they already have a problem they want solved.
mhm.
So but still, that problem is kind of, I used to have a term for that, um, accurate but vague. Yeah,
Hmm.
we have a problem in shipping. Oh, that's nice. There are 35 people in shipping. There's 15 different processes. You work 7 days a week.
Yeah,
Could you be
yeah,
a little more clear? So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I've given this blob,
Right.
and through facilitating the teams, I can isolate it to something very specific the teams understand is broken,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to fix it yet. And so that's a little bit different angle than you, but it's all the same thing. You
Mhm.
immerse them in understanding what's going on. And once you clarify it, then you're off and running into having them document, what do you really mean by broken?
Yeah.
Can you
Well,
measure that? Because we have to measure it later to see that it's better if we're going to fix it.
yeah. We run into that a lot, and I've had it with past classes. We go through a phase where I say, well, what's wrong with your mom's accounting, process? It's really messed up, or it needs to be streamlined, or it's highly inefficient. What does that mean exactly, right? Efficiency is a fraction, right? Output over input, right, is sort of an efficiency. And do you know what the output is? Do you know what the input is? It's tough to get that specific, and that's important when you're doing a project, right?
Yeah, so one of the projects I saw on the chat real fast was training, some type of onboarding training.
Right.
There's an excellent project, but how are you going to measure success?
Right.
How are you going to know what's wrong, change it, and then see a nudge in that needle to say, hey, the training is now better.
Right.
It's possible, but you have to get your head around it.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to point out to the students that you can go ahead and type a question in the chat for Beau at this point, because I don't want to. He and I can go on like this forever, actually.
And we
Um,
have.
but we want you guys to get your questions answered. And by the way, I'm just going to say, I don't know what Beau's hourly rate is these days, but if you had a question on your particular process or problem, or the thing that, if you wanted a Beau to help you get a little bit more specific in a particular problem, we wouldn't necessarily refuse any questions along that line either. So Beau, like, I think you might have mentioned this, but maybe it's just coming back, like your biggest lean challenge, at this point, or thing that you're. Um,
Oh, so I guess there's a micro and a macro. I
okay.
thought about that for a while. The micro is I can't. So what I didn't tell the class is I wrote an article on MarketWatch.com over a year ago about the Strategic National Stockpile and its absolute failure to supply PPE to the healthcare system, and it's their job to do so.
Right.
So I wrote an op-ed that talked about, hey, here's the issue, here's how we might think about fixing it. My micro challenge is getting anyone to care.
Mm-hmm.
And I have run around Congress, just even try to get emails. I can't get email addresses. They don't allow you to get an email address unless you're in their district.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to raise this issue
Right.
with the intent of never having this happen again. And there's a model out there that just might work. So that's the micro one. The macro one is the broader question of what the right way is to interest people in understanding this at the bachelor level. So if I want to integrate or be part of a team that integrates better learning about these concepts, what's the right way? That's the challenge for me right now, just thinking it through.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, let's see, I'm looking to see if there's any Oh, okay. So we got Jose. You want to ask your question? Why don't you go ahead and pop on so that it's not just Beau and my faces that are up here.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, what is the most successful Lean Six Sigma project that you worked on?
And don't start with one of those, how do you going to measure success things,
Oh,
Beau?
jeez.
Just tell them.
What do you mean by success? You mean dollars or people?
I don't know. What do you think is
Well,
more important?
dollars in 2005, we saved General Motors $3 billion a year forever. By in the office, off the shop floor.
Wow.
Nobody can touch that. Nobody even talks about it because right after that, GM got a big black eye. So we couldn't even use it for marketing purposes, but no one's ever touched that. And I was part of a team of about 6 or 7 people, I think. In terms of people, the best one I had was just a couple of years ago where I was able to change my whole model of consulting to teach a few key people in an insurance company how to make improvements. And they spread it with internal teams of their clients throughout the organization without me. And they did very, very well. I was really proud of that. So the issue is, how can you change an organization without being involved as an external consultant, minimizing your involvement, which is not great for my pocketbook, but man, did it make me feel good.
Yeah. That's kind of like the golden ring. Quincy, you got a question. Go ahead and ask Beau.
Hi, Beau. Thanks for coming today. So my question was, I was thinking about my project, and I'm a transfer student, and actually a few other people in this class, we're going to help other transfer students next year. And I was thinking maybe a survey would be a good way to ask like before and after. Is that, I guess, within the Lean Six Sigma field, is that a good way to measure success if to look at improvement of a survey?
Yeah, absolutely. Data does not have to be quantitative to be real. And one of the best students I coached in the Ohio State MBA course used qualitative data to kick off his major project, and cycled around afterwards, used qualitative data to demonstrate that he made a difference. I think qualitative data, which a survey gives, can be exceptional. So don't back off from it.
And I would say, just because I will be grading your report, Quincy, and that qualitative piece, surveys, counts and numbers, those can come out of surveys, but even those open-ended answers where people sort of describe how they're feeling or their impressions, if you can sort of figure out some way to, maybe visually display that or describe it, that gets a lot of points in my book also.
So ask the professor to tell you about a force field analysis. You can actually start out saying what's holding us back and what's helping us, which is all qualitative. And at the end, see how many of those things that were holding us back are no longer there.
Yeah.
Seriously, there's some really cool ways to do this. It's very simple, but it takes engaging with the people.
Right. Or even if the things are holding back or getting smaller in typeset font, or something just to demonstrate what's going on. Sumi, you've got a question for Beau.
Yes, thank you so much for coming today. I'm sorry I can't turn on my camera. I'm in West Africa right now. I really liked what you said earlier about how the correct answer isn't always the perfect answer, just because of different contexts. So just from studying this class, and just the idea of perfection and quality work with Lean Six Sigma, how do you balance that? I'm very interested in consulting, especially in developing countries. And I'm just thinking of how it's different for them there, what the American standard is, or what perfection is for them. So how do you balance that? How do you give them quality work and also at a fast pace, give them the best, but then we shape it to their context of what they need, even though if it's not the perfect or the correct answer every time?
The biggest thing to understand is how good do they need to be to move forward. That's the biggest thing. So however you wish to measure that, and I don't know much about the problems that you want to solve in developing countries. I know what problems are developing countries, but I don't know which ones you're trying to look at. So if they define how good they need to be to either survive or be in the marketplace 24 months from now, that's the goal. It's not your goal, it's their goal. So it's in their words and their terms. And then with that, you can start to create a path to get there. So just think about what they need to succeed or survive in a very short period of time, because don't make it 5 years, make it 12 months, make it 18 months, make it 24 months, depending on the issue.
And Beau, would that be sort of the viewpoint of sort of the customer? Like what is the value you're trying to get out of the particular project, right? So we'll try to sort this out, like who are the sponsors, who are the owners, who are the champions, who are the, there's a big sort of section in the Morse material that sort of talks about that. But I think Beau, you're sort of mainly focused on, like, understanding the value, which is sort of a customer's perspective of what you're trying to do, right? And
yeah. So as just an example, I remember from traveling in Africa, they're worried about clean water. So there was an organization there drilling a bunch of water wells. Well, that's okay. That's one solution. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money. Is there another way? All they want is clean water. Well, so that may be a big hurdle, but is there another way to provide clean water without digging a well?
yeah.
So I'm sorry if that's a weird example, but I worry about people with predefined solutions,
Right.
when you're looking at sometimes a dire need. And how do you start thinking about differently? In fact, I actually go back and use something I just heard last week on a phone call with a guy who was part of a nursing home, is part of a nursing home in Ohio, and he was tasked to find masks for COVID. And there were no masks, but they didn't need a mask. They needed a way not to transmit the virus. One solution is a mask. So by changing the question to how do I not spread the virus, they were able to find materials and other things that had nothing to do with medical supplies to help them not spread the virus inside the nursing home. And they ended up having 0 deaths. And 20 miles away, they had 130 beds and 74 deaths. So it was so you change the thinking based on the need. And I think that's really important for anybody. But I think when you think about the myriad of problems in third world countries, you need to get really basic and simple with them, but they'll tell you what they need. And then how do you start thinking about it differently?
Excellent. Thank you, Beau. Thank you, Sumi, for that question. Benjamin, you're up.
All right, yeah. I was kind of wondering, I know, Professor, you mentioned earlier how like this subject wasn't really a thing they taught in school or in college when you guys were our age or at our stage. So I was wondering how you got your start in Lean Six Sigma, or how you became interested, or how you learned about it.
I was a manager in a very large consulting firm. We got a job at a Ford plant in Sharonville, Ohio that made transmissions. We walked in suits, and we were told by the plant manager we were given a quarter of the space, which is 1 million square feet. It's a 4 million square foot plant. And he says, I don't really care what we were set from corporate. So that's a big red flag. We're from corporate. We're here to help. He said, I don't care what you do. I just want the parts to come out faster, cheaper, and better. Period. That's how I learned. We had no metrics. We had no process. All we knew was we had to figure out what the heck was going on inside this 1 million square feet and figure out ways to make the parts faster, better, and cheaper. I'm sorry, cheaper. So it's kind of the school of hard knocks. And I wouldn't advise that for anybody.
That's
But
interesting. I was thinking you were going to tell me somebody walked in one day and was like, "Hey, I learned about this really cool thing," but
no,
it's more interesting to just kind of that you learned about it organically.
and in a hurry. I mean, we were charging a lot of money for this. Yeah, it was a real hurry. It was one of the best and hardest things I've ever done.
I think to Beau's point too, there's a lot still to this day, a large component of, the, lean thinking, lean community is based really on best practices, right? So, we get people like Beau out there sort of inventing on the fly how to do something better, cheaper, faster. And we say, hey, that's pretty lean. We don't have to invent that again. Let's pull that into the sort of the lean body of knowledge or the lean tool set. And that becomes something that we can teach or show other people. So that's actually a nice way that this whole body of knowledge actually grows.
Yeah, and at the time, so for those of you who have read about lean, a lot of that is based on Toyota. The books weren't even translated from Toyota then. There was nothing, nothing. So after we were done, someone showed up with this mock-up version yet to be published of single method exchange of die. That was a terrible translation. It was a literal translation. You could barely read it. It was an excellent, oh, I mean, people actually write about this stuff? So it was just, it was, I don't think about this often, but it was pretty amazing. It was hard.
So more of the crime would be the way I approached it, where I was like Beau, I was inventing this stuff, but they had already written the books. I just didn't know the books existed. Right?
Yeah.
So I should have been reading the books, and it wasn't until I found the books that it was good.
Yeah,
Let's see. We had another person who had a question there.
One final thing, just David. Six Sigma wasn't Six Sigma yet, and lean wasn't lean yet.
Yeah.
It was really early.
Yep, it was early. Okay, any other questions? Well, I'll tell you what, we're actually kind of, at the time limit at this point, Beau. It's always great to talk to you. We're gonna have to talk more offline, I know. But like, what sort of piece of advice do you have to leave with these, young folks just starting out on their lean journey? They've got some advantages that maybe you and I didn't have when we were first starting out, but what would you sort of tell them?
I've been kind of bouncing around this, but I think to be very succinct, it's not about you, it's about the system. You could have a terrible job, but the process is great. Or you could have a great job, but the process is terrible. So think about it from a very broad perspective. You're trying to fix the system, not your work. There's a big difference, because if you fix the system, you actually are helping meet a strategic goal. If you fix your personal work, who cares? With all due respect, who cares? The organization, that's not important to the organization. And so also keep it in context. What's important to the company should be what you're looking at. And be aware of what they can handle and not handle. So, and you won't know that without kind of talking to them. If they can't go that extra mile, don't ask them to. They're doing all they can. So try to figure out what can they do, what will they sign up for? Because if they don't sign up for it, they're not engaged, it's not going to matter, because it's not going to happen. So that's kind of what I worry about now, in terms of making sure that you walk in there with your eyes open and try to understand what's going on from a system perspective and what the organization is capable of doing.
Right. Yeah, I think it's one of the things I like about lean is that baby steps are okay, until you learn to take bigger steps. That's how we learn, right? So
yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your wisdom once again. And thank you for kicking off our Lean Celebrity season. Hopefully the students appreciate that and a little bit of perspective of what lean looks like in a real world.